Come on. Come on.
We're back with one more down. Today we are speaking to LaMonte Coleman, number 44, running back, left halfback out of Peabody High School, class of 1990. LaMonte Coleman was an outstanding running back, feared competitor of mine in the PSAC 92 through the 94 seasons. This man was an absolute machine when it comes to Division II football. I personally faced him on the field 2 back-to-back seasons with one 306-yard game and then another 270-yard game against us in back-to-back years. LaMonte went on to obtain a free agent contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he has moved on into the business world today, where he is making his way, raising his family in South Florida. It's a pleasure to get the chance to speak with you and connect with you and get a peek at the man behind the face mask, and have you tell who you are outside of the athletic realm. So I thank you in advance for agreeing to be on today as a guest, LaMonte.
Ron, it's exciting. I look forward to being on your podcast. I think you've done an outstanding job, and I'm looking forward to share some things that the viewers may know about me and some things they may not know. So I'm excited to be here on your podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure. Generally, we get started, framing who the individual is as a person, what your family background and dynamic may be, describing the area that you come from. I understand that you were reared in Garfield, a neighborhood community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So if you could, would you like to start there and introducing us to who you are and who your parents were and early days of your development growing up in Pittsburgh?
Absolutely, Ron. Wow. Born in 1971, the place I'll call home is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a proud, hardworking individual who comes from a family. My father, Norris Coleman, my mother, Georgia Coleman. My father was born in Mobile, Alabama, and my mother, Atlanta, Georgia. They made their migration to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Fell in love, got married, and I'm one of 5 kids. There's 4 other kids. I have an older brother, Demetrius. I have an older sister, Noreen, younger sister, Valerie, and baby sister, Crystal. But I grew up in a place called Garfield. It's in the projects of Pittsburgh, where I met a lot of good friends, a lot of associates. And that's where I really learned to really start working as a team. We didn't have youth sports coming up in the 70s and 80s. And the YMCA was basically at the epicenter of where everyone was to meet and connect for movies, for socials, and things like that. But Garfield, a lot of the teammates, and which I'll call teammates, because when you grow up in the neighborhood like Garfield, you start to really form a bond with people who were like-minded, who played kickball, who played football, who played basketball. But we started to actually have a respect for each other of who could throw, who could catch, and who could run. And so we really started to have makeshift teams where we kind of knew who was going to play with each other. And it formed a lot of bonds as I was as I went through middle school and then high school. And so Garfield and the local friends that I grew up with really was at the start of how to form a team and how to and share the ball a little bit. So,
you know, as you're describing that, and I'm sure there's pictures and images running through your head. Can you give me a basic description of who you were from your own viewpoint as a child growing up in that environment in the early 70s in a cultural rich place like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we didn't travel much. My dad, he worked heavy construction. My mother was a stay-at-home before she went back to school, became a nurse's aide, then an LPN, then a registered nurse. So we were pretty much homebodies. So we depended on our neighbors. We depended on community events, and it really shaped me to become pretty much a hardworking kid. I was pretty quiet. I didn't have a lot of swag back in the day. My mom and dad, they worked really hard, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of my clothes came from my aunties and my cousins and stuff like that. And that's just how you did it. I mean, they didn't pass down anything holy. There was some really good stuff. So we really depended on close family, close friends. And that really, I think that's where I got my morals from. It's like, we really want to have an understanding of that there is an opportunity to move ahead. But my mom and dad, they were just happy with us staying out of trouble. They didn't grow up in a real hostile neighborhood, but we do know that there are some opportunities to get into scuffles. But for the most part, Garfield was a lower socioeconomic surrounding that we didn't have a lot, but we had tough love. We had a sense of community, a sense of family, and that really helped me hone skills as I moved on to other aspects of my life.
And, in saying that, who are some of the individuals that you would identify as allies to yourself as a younger person and helping you take that next steps and meet some of those benchmarks with some of the challenges that just come from living in the 70s and coming from a hard, gritty steel mill town?
Wow. Man, there's so many. Douglas and Damon Thompson were neighbors of mine. They never were in trouble. They also came from a hardworking family. Mike and Melvin Gay, they're two of my brothers, Michael and Melvin. Actually, Douglas is a firefighter. I'm sorry, Douglas is he drives for Pat Authority. Damon has his own exterminating business. He's actually helped my family out. Michael is a long-term Pittsburgh police officer. His brother Michael, who's a firefighter, he's in heaven right now. So those are Jason Bell from Howland Park. Those are 5 people off the top of my head that I'm still in association with. That they were grounded. We loved on one another. We played sports together. We went to school together. And those are individuals I consider my brothers, and they have very respectable careers, and they're great family people.
You know, as you're growing up in the early 70s in Pittsburgh, you know, you got a lot of great things going on in the town in terms of athletics. The teams are starting to assert themselves on the football and the baseball front. You know, when you think about you know, your affinity as a Steelers or a Pirates fan during that time period, you know, what are those memories that jump out to you about that?
Oh man, without the Pittsburgh Pirates, Kent Colby, Bill Matlock, Dave Parker, who just went to the Baseball Hall of Fame, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann. I mean, man, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Pittsburgh Steelers were our outlet. They were our heroes. Hardworking, dedicated, will answer the bell in inclement weather. I looked up to that so much. Even our fans who would create fires in dumpsters or garbage cans to be dedicated to go down the Three Rivers to cheer their team on, come from a very respectable, hardworking, and gritty community of Pittsburgh. And I think that's where, without those attributes and seeing my community and my family, especially my dad, who got up every day at 5 o'clock to go to a construction job for 30 years, those were the qualities that were definitely, those are things I saw every day. And I definitely took I think those are the hardworking attributes that allowed me to accomplish certain things, both on and off the field.
You know, I used to take small visits over to Pittsburgh, you know, visiting with my uncle, who he was in Pittsburgh as a resident for my entire lifetime up until he passed back in 2002. But he showed me that there was a different way to look at the world, because he was a local self-made businessman. He had a tax office up there just off of Anaheim up on the north side. And, you know, when he come to Pittsburgh, I think it was sometime in the early 50s. He was a great athlete. My family comes from an athletic background over in Wampum, Pennsylvania, but he was the first one because he was the oldest. He didn't have the opportunity to develop a professional career like my 2 uncles and my father did, but he did have an opportunity briefly with Pitt as a basketball player, and then he left school and transitioned into a postal job, but found the work too monotonous. So he looked around at what was going on at the time. You know, you had the docks and the train yard where they're bringing in produce, and he created his own business off of that and vowed to work for himself. So in visiting with him over those years, you know, he used to take me around Pittsburgh to some of the different sites. I remember riding past the old Pitt Stadium and him pointing down in there and telling me about certain players that had played there over the years. And at the time, I wasn't even on a trajectory to be an athlete, but he's given me this education and showing me this vision of choice for a Black man, that it's up to you to decide the path that you want to take, and it's up to you to dedicate yourself into making it come true. So, you know, when you think about yourself back in those early days, you know, have you been a guy that's always come from success and top level performance, or did you have any moments of development and figuring things out for yourself before things smoothing out for you and you figuring out, what your true calling was?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Unlike the Allens, which I'm a big baseball fan. Congratulations to your uncle for going to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I watched the Baseball Hall of Fame. I didn't even know that was your family. So when you have the pedigree that you have, and you actually have people around you that can actually share stories along that pathway of whether you have the talent or not, you had somebody. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have someone I'm the first one to go to college in my family. I was the first one to sign a contract in my family. So, being a trend center, I made a lot of mistakes. And, I noticed that even as a Proposition 48 student. So didn't come from an athletic home. The attributes that I grew up with were hardworking, dedication, the 10 commandments: you don't steal, you don't lie, you come home before the street lights are come on. Rooted with that Southern yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am attributes, where you didn't talk back to your mom and dad. So everything that I tried to do and anything I thought I accomplished, it was I was a MacGyver. I would copy and paste. I would look at upperclassmen, and thank God I had upperclassmen at Peabody High School that were on the pathway to Howard and Spelman and Pitt. And so I looked at them and I said, I want to be like you one day. The cheerleaders, they all had 3.0 to 4.0, the pom-pom girls as well. I never was that person that had academic excellence, because I was always trying to find my way. So, and that's why my path was pretty crooked, because, I didn't come from an athletic home, and I didn't come from an academic home. My dad had a 6th grade education, but he had a PhD in hard working. My mother was stay at home, and then she realized that I could probably help out. So she took her passion to want to help people and help cure people. And since she raised 5 kids of her own with me and my 4 other siblings, from the projects, she decided to go study and become a nurse's assistant, and then an LPN, and then an RN in the projects, where we had to come together as a family, as she went to Conley College over in the Uptown to try to study hard, raise her family, and be a good wife. And she did all that in Garfield Heights. So I tip my cap to my mom and dad, because no one taught them either. And so I wanted to be the person to break the cycle of getting to the next phase. And I'm so happy that they at least gave me the work ethic and a safe home place, to where I didn't have to worry about, am I going to eat tomorrow? Am I going to live tomorrow? At least they gave me that. So it gave me a way to get to Slippery Rock University.
And that's outstanding in terms of your view and your ability to connect and paint that picture of just what your parents may have been up against as a young couple coming together and identifying places where they could get their own opportunities to help galvanize your families and keep everybody going. A lot of people have to do that and have to figure out a way to survive in the face of adversity. For you, when does your formal athletic career begin, and what sport is that in when you get into organized competition?
Baseball. There's no, some people are like, oh, I can't stand it, it's too slow. I said, but so is fine wine. When you want the best wine, and so you don't ever say rush the process, but you enjoy the swirl and the gargle of that umami when you digest it. And in that fermentation process, it takes time. So when you're talking about baseball, it's it's a refined sport, and it has a lot of nonverbal and verbal communication, just like the shortstop and the second baseman, when they put their glove up and they go open mouth and close mouth, telling each other who's going to cover the bag. There's a lot of beauty in what's the unspoken word when it comes to baseball. And the avid fan doesn't know that, but the boys of summer who have their hands blistered, who go into the cage and hitting 1,000 balls with 200 misses. Baseball is one of those sports that helped me with patience. So I took the qualities of baseball, waiting for the pitcher to dig into the mound, waiting for the second baseman to call time and fix his pants. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of beauty in waiting. And so I enjoy baseball for all the idiosyncrasies of patience. And then you get the beauty of the long ball, the stolen base, and things like that. But if you really understand that even a baby in the fetus is 9 months, you can't rush that as well. So when you really think about baseball, the beauty of baseball is the wait for excellence, the wait for the right pitch. What do you say in baseball? Every good coach says, one pitch, one zone. You wait for it. You don't swing at anything or you look like a fool. So that's one of the things that help. Baseball is an attribute of patience that allowed me to win in other things, especially when it comes to football, when I'm waiting for holes to open up and develop. I learned that patience through baseball, and a lot of people don't understand that.
Now, switching over into this prime sport that connects you and I together, what is your very first recollection as a football player playing for the Peabody Highlanders?
It really came with my freshman year. I went to Fort Pitt Elementary. That's a neighborhood school. And because of my lack of academic success, my mother had me shipped off to Columbus Traditional Academy on the north side, about 25 to 30 minutes away. It was a great program. It taught me a lot about academics, about my inner self and my outer self, with a dress code and teachers that focus on science and technology. So I was really removed from the local neighborhood and all of the chatter of the next game, the next high school game, because I was on the north side. So when I finally finished my middle school and I knew I wanted to come home, I wanted to be a Highlander. All my other two siblings were Highlanders, and I had to be one. Seeing the homecoming game, seeing the hoopla and everyone dressed up and their outfits and getting excited. And I remember it was against Carrick High School. So hearing the hoopla and the buzz about the Peabody Highlanders playing at home before, this is the year in '86 where they played their home games at Peabody High School on that crazy dirt. And so it was the school camaraderie and school spirit that got me excited about trying out the next year, even though I never played youth football. My brother, who was in love with Tony Dorsett, he says, if you play, you got to be a running back. And Peabody was tough. They had a lot of success, not the success that Peary and Brashear had, but they had success. And so it was really seeing how my student body looked at the football team. I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted a pretty girl. And I wanted my name called. And so it was really the fanfare that got me involved with football, and also the baseball players that were friends that also played two sports. So it was really the school spirit and not knowing what to do myself that really led me into the game of football.
As we previewed through a few of your clips from those days, you guys are running a wishbone offense, power running, two tight ends, but you're breaking off some very long runs there, and you had an outstanding career. As your stats roll across the screen, 800 yards, 980 approximate yards in a system where you're sharing with on any given play, potentially 3 other ball carriers. That just kind of is a testament to the type of athletic drive that you had and your desire to be an impact player within that game. When you think about yourself as an individual through the course of those 3 seasons that you played for the Highlanders, could you kind of paint the picture of what your development and your trajectory is going from your sophomore year through your junior year to your senior year? And then on the back end of that, can you highlight and give me some description of the competition that you're facing? Me being an Ohio guy, I'm familiar with the names of the schools and some of the personalities, but I don't have that inside view and recollection of who the prime people were and what that may have looked like for you guys during the course of the late 80s, competing against each other around the city of Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Those are great questions. We'll talk about the trajectory and then the competition. In 87, when I first made the team, I was scared. I ran like a Eureka cleaner. I was getting teed off, and I had to learn how to bend and run like a running back because I had speed, but I didn't know how to run effectively to protect the ball and myself. So I had people that were helping me with that, and it was really trial by fire because you're going against a lot of veterans. And so my sophomore year, I was just happy to make the team, but we did have a wishbone system, and I was the left halfback. And I would say that I'm not going to say I was featured. I'm going to say that there was more of equity of sharing the ball because Mikey Wright was our fullback. Ron Johnson was more of a pure runner, and he taught me a lot about running the ball. He was shorter than me, but he knew how to cut. He knew how to pro step. And so I used to follow him and watch him. I was the fastest back, but it was one of those things where, I didn't care if I got the ball more than Ronnie because he was an upperclassman, and so was Mikey. And so we struggled a little bit that year under Coach Bob Worrell, and we ended up losing Coach Bob Worrell. I don't know if it was to cancer or something, but he passed away after the season. And so we remember us all going to his funeral. And that was a pivotal time for Peabody Highlander football because Coach Worrell was a coach, a prominent coach in the Pittsburgh City League. So at that time, we didn't know what to do. And we were tearful all at the funeral home. And I can still remember it like yesterday. And we thought that with his passing that the football team would fold. And so my closest friend, Jason Bell, who was my number 1 O-lineman, he basically went to another coach who had coached in the WPIL, and his name is Joe Nath. Joe Nath was a legend with coaching, teaching, and championships in the WPIL. He had coached at Peabody for a little bit, but they basically begged him to be our leader. That's what we called him, our leader. And he was a visionary. He could see things develop before the next person. And so he agreed to come on board, and he coached me in my junior and senior year, and he taught me how to run the ball. He taught me how to vision. He taught me to go home and sleep about the play. He actually gave us the play on Thursday nights or Wednesday nights if we played on Thursday, and he would tell us 62 dive, 63 dive, or 62 trap, and he would visualize that. And I remember opening up my junior year, and he said 63 dive. And if you go back to the tapes, we were playing against Alderdice, and he called 63 dive, and I burst up the gut and ran 63 yards for a touchdown untouched in South Stadium. And we all believed in him. We thought he was like a descendant from God, man. Like, how do you know this, But just like any other coach, general leader, you got to believe, right? You got to believe. So after that season, I had a pretty good career. and we had like a Cordell Stewart quarterback in Lamont Johnson. We had a transfer at fullback and linebacker, Ron Alford here, and they called him Duder because he can do both tasks at a high level. And then Casey Gibner, who was an all-state star basketball and right halfback. And just like Casey during my senior year, he understood that I was a senior and I became the feature back. The teams that we had to go to, the second half of your question, Peary and Peabody were the dominant teams in the Pittsburgh City League. The game to watch was Peary versus Brashear. Brashear had a phenom as inside linebacker who ended up signing as a West Virginia Mountaineer. His name is Michael Booth. They had a phenomenal slashing running back. His name is Jimmy Lincoln. He ended up getting a scholarship with Georgia Tech. And then in my senior year, Peary Traditional Commodores, they were the gritty Baltimore Ravens of the Pittsburgh City League. You couldn't run on them. My teammate Ramon Hart, he led the way on defense, and as their City League All-Star, City League MVP, he toted the ball. He wasn't a pure runner, but he was physical and he was nasty. And I got to give a shout out to my cousin Darnell Pepsi Farrow, who had the key, I think 100-yard, it was either interception or fumble return to break the back of Berwick in the Pittsburgh City League's only, and I mean only, state championship team. And those were the teams that really were feared and you got up for. And I just thank the Lord that I got a chance to play at South Stadium against those teams and those players who are doing very well today.
You know, when I think back to that time period, you know, you're developing and finding yourself as a running back at that high school level. During the course that Barry Sanders is doing his thing out at Oklahoma State.
Yes.
Who were some of the people that you may have had your eye on at the college level at that time? And then, you know, if you can think back to that period and the production that you're having and the success that you're having, you know, where did you see yourself at in terms of making that next jump to the next level, leaving out of Peabody?
Yeah, I would be lying to say that my City League back brother, Curtis Martin and Ray Zellers, I rooted for them so much because here we are, 3 backs coming out trying to get to the next level. So I rooted for Ray, and I knew he was a pure runner who was at fullback. I rooted for Kurt, who was a slasher. He had 5 200-yard games in a row in the Pittsburgh City League playing for University of Pittsburgh. So we all knew that they were going to go. So I had to find some other inspiration as well. And it was Rashawn Salam out of Colorado, who ended up winning the Heisman. And then my senior year, I remember this third string running back, who the first string running back got hurt in camp. And the second string running back ended up getting hurt in a game on ESPN. So this third string running back ended up running, not even starting. This third string running back ran for 386 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns on ESPN as a third string back. And that is the Pro Hall of Fame's one of my favorite running backs in the world, Marshall Faulk. So I remember ESPN took out a page, and I still have it. And it has something like, the words were, he gave up his girlfriend. He gave up eating candy. He ended up giving up a whole bunch of things just so 6'2", 250-pound running backs can take a swipe at him. So what I saw Marshall Faulk do at the Division I level, coming from the third string, I equated that as me being a Proposition 48 kid who had 20, 30 Division I offers. And I said, I have to be a big fish in a small pond. And I looked at the Slippery Rock record book and all of the greats that came before me. Greg Patera, NFL. Ricky Porter, NFL. Chuck Sanders, my big brother, NFL. And I said, wow, this is really running back university. So I had to look at the books, and I went, in order for any NFL team to even take a look at me at Division II, I started looking at the phone pages like Superman, and I said, I have to take the phone book. And I looked at the phone book, like all the records in the record book, and I said, I have to shred them. I have to shred them to get a look. And 2 seasons later, as I started my senior year, Coach Mahalik, Coach Campagna, my offensive coordinator, Joe Walton, cousins, there's another Walton who was a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. They got together this offensive line. They went down to the University of Miami and took the one-back system and brought it back to Slippery Rock. My coach, like I said, being a visionary, he knew that I was not a 3 yards in a cloud of dust because they had a multiple eye offense, which I hated, a fullback in front of me. And they went down to the University of Miami, copied the one-back, zone offense, and then basically ripped up the I broke a lot of records my junior year, and then re-broke my records my senior year, and that drove 20 to 25 NFL scouts to Slippery Rock University to take a look. And so I'm indebted to the Slippery Rock University's coaching staff, and especially my offensive coordinator, Vic Campagna, and my second dad, Dr. George Mahalik. I love them with all my heart.
You know, as you kind of go through your entry there, can you give me some indication of what your feelings may have been in terms of Prop 48 being in place at that time, having the knowledge that schools from a higher level were very interested in having your services, but ultimately, you know, ending up at the Division II level?
I never was upset at the rigors of college placement. In life, you have to have a threshold. What's acceptable, what's not. Our society has to have a threshold of what's acceptable and what's not. I don't blame Stanley Kaplan, and I don't blame the universities and colleges that agreed to meet a certain threshold of a 700 SAT, or at the time it was 18 on the ACT. I got less than a 700 on the SAT, and I could not get past 17 on the ACT. My girlfriend at the time knew that there was a need and actually paid for the Stanley Kaplan classes somewhere close to Highland Park in East Liberty in Pittsburgh. I took the classes, and just because I took the classes were about $500, the application of knowledge will help you pass the test. But if you have issues and glitches in your education, meaning that math was a real sore spot for me. And we all know PEMDAS, right? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, addition, subtraction. When it comes to algebra, if you don't understand PEMDAS, one error will break down the whole math problem. And so the math portion is really what hindered me. And I took my medicine like a big boy, but inside I was dying like a flower without water and sunshine, because that was my way out of Garfield Heights. That was my way to show my mom and dad that I'll be the first person to graduate from college. So I felt like a failure. I didn't want to let my mom and dad down. I didn't want to let my brother and sisters down. So where do I go? Where do I go to become a man, to be successful? How about my dreams? How about my goals? So passing the SAT was the gateway to freedom. It was the gateway to higher education. I didn't have another pathway. I didn't have any other skills. I had to get to college to hone those skills. I wanted a new set of friends. I wanted to play on TV. I wanted to go to the National Football League. And now there's a pit hole. And there's one that I now, for the first time in my life in 18 years, I can't go to my mother. I can't go to my father, because going to them means that they're going to take resources they don't have to get me to freedom. So I had to take the road less traveled and had to find a way to get to college. And when Dennis Dirk Winston, former Pittsburgh Steelers and Super Bowl champion, came to my home out of Verona, PA, municipality of Penn Hills. And when they realized that this Division I guy is not going to go to Division I, that's where the D2s come out and they start knocking on the door, hoping that they can grab you. And he was very convincing. I didn't have any other options. And I decided to sign a letter of intent with Slippery Rock University. But I didn't realize what I was signing. It was going to be a gateway for success. It ultimately led to me getting to be on a Super Bowl roster, breaking records at a fine university, meeting Coach Mahalik, Coach Campagna, meeting Matt Moritz, Brian Woodring, John Oldham, Mark Ferguson, Mark Booth, Kevin Reardon, Sonny Carson, Ramon Hart, Tony Robinson, Leonard McClendon. Leonard McClendon was the man who showed me. He was my mentor. He was my guide at Slippery Rock. So for everyone that thinks that you don't have a chance at the Division II level, you're fooling yourself. You just got to have the right team around you that's going to believe in you. And that's why I say, as emotional as I am right now, find someone that believes in you, because you can't do it by yourself.
You know, as you express yourself and, you get emotional about your trajectory and your entry into Slippery Rock University and those that helped you and aided you along the way in becoming the player that you were, I can really relate to some of those feelings, because as high school athletes, guys with a certain level of athletic ability and talent, you want to be able to display that in places and in areas where, you get the most benefit out of that for yourself. As I think about you and your expression of what it was for you in that process that you went through, not coming right out of high school and getting hit the ground running opportunity from senior year of high school to freshman year of college. I think for a lot of guys who end up at the Division II, the Division III level, you play with a a chip on your shoulder and something to prove for those guys that really want to excel and exhaust all of this talent that we have as athletes. For you, you know, when you're coming into that system and you're adapting to the college level of football versus the high school level, when you're starting to understand what the Slippery Rock program is based around, and a guy like Dr. George Mahalik, who is a Slippery Rock alum himself, and then you really get into understanding that the PSAC West Division is a rugged premier Division II conference for this time that you're playing in. You know, me being an Edinboro alum, and you know, I relayed to you the other night, my first glimpse of you happened to be you setting the record for Slippery Rock University with 306 yards rushing on a snowy, icy day. And I had no idea who you were before seeing this performance. Can you kind of roll back and take me into your thoughts about, you know, what that Slippery Rock program was, and then, you know, some of the inner motivation that Dr. Mahalik was able to bring to you guys as players there. And, you know, we'll transition into some of the great personalities and other running backs within the league, because the league was very heavy with talent at that time. So if you'd like to pick up and just kind of jump in on some of those questions that I posed to you, and we'll continue our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ron. Wow. So 89 was the last year that I suited up. And so when I had a pit stop, I went to Slippery Rock, and then ended up going to Community College of Allegheny County and played baseball there for the spring of 91 and the fall of 91. And then I knew it was time to get up out of there. I ended up talking to Sal Sensuri, University of Pittsburgh coach and great. And I was thinking about that option. And I was what Kurt was doing his thing, Curtis Martin. Then I made a phone call to Coach Mahalik to see if I can come back there. And because I didn't really know how many options I had. I just wanted to go. I knew I had to leave community college because to me it was a dead end, because it wasn't like I went there for an academic associates. I wanted to get back and get back to a school where I can go play ball and possibly finish a degree. So in that year, when I came back in 92, wasn't a lot of money. So I had to basically start from the bottom, which a guy like me growing up in Garfield, that's not new territory. So when I got there, Sonny Carson was a starter. He was a senior, and Kevin Reardon was a converted fullback who could run the ball in our one back system. And basically it was hell on earth. Third string, that means you get third string offensive line. I'm going against premier D linemen and linebackers in the PSAC. James Ward, who ended up going to the Chargers, All-American. Michael Elwood, multiple All-American. John Secor, multiple All-American, who ended up winning one or two championships in the AFL. The late great Sam James, who would take everybody's heads off. Kareem Cole, same thing. He was more like he was a Mac, but he's more like a Will, that he would hit you and he could cover. Ramon Hart and all those guys, man. So I'm facing these bullets every single day, and my body had not transformed to the college football man that I needed to be to take on that type of assault. So just like a meat tenderizer, I'm feeling this pain every single practice all through spring ball. And what I thought was the opportunity to get back into Slippery Rock, the pounding of the first team defense was giving me every reason to ring the bell and get up out of there, because the assault was that bad. But then in order for you to leave, you got to have some place to go, because if I leave, then I'm back to where I started. And I like to eat every day, and I like to have a warm place to lay down. So I had to take it on the chin. I had to get right with God, and I had to get through this evolution of college football at the D2 level. So those guys really showed me what it was to be a pros pro, how they prepared for practice, how they prepared during summer camps, the dreaded 350 for time we had to do. That was incorporated by the Pittsburgh Steelers trainer that was with Slippery Rock at one point. We had to run our training camp test was you had to, after training camp, after practice in the morning, you had to go up to the stadium, drop everything off, and we had to run by group 350 yards around the field in 60 seconds time with 60 seconds rest. That's what the Steelers used to do, so that's what we had to do. And let me tell you right now, there's not 1 year that I made all 5. If you don't make them, then you have to just basically run one without time. But but I was a dog at practice. Like you didn't want to tackle me at practice. You didn't want to see me at practice. I looked to break backs. But those teams became my family. Those players became my brothers. And no one was really talking about pursuits of NFL. We were talking about state championships and being good people and representing the university at the highest degree. So those teams that I played with in 92, 93, 94, they became the brothers that I needed and the men, and several of them were men of God. So it really helped me when I was in when I hit a rough patch, that there's a few guys that really believed in the Lord, but also they were just really good people that wanted to take me under the wing and become a good teammate.
You know, you had mentioned some names earlier that, you know, I have familiarity in terms of the people that they are. Leonard McClendon, he's from my hometown.
Yes, Lynn Roof.
Wide receiver, defensive back, quarterback for the South High Warriors back in the late 80s. Tony Robinson was one of the most tenacious defensive backs and receivers in our area. He come out of Woodrow Wilson High School. That's a school that did not have a lot of winning in terms of tradition, but they came with a grit and a toughness and a desire to get better and make it out of the confines of a place like Youngstown, Ohio. One of my Southside guys, he was a upperclassman in high school. Bernard Thomas ended up becoming a great defensive end there at Slippery Rock. So, you know, I can tell by that the Slippery Rock program has an eye for talent and an eye for giving guys a chance and an opportunity. You know, when we talk about the era that you played in the PSAC, at the time, Michael Mann was the hot name. That IUP program was runner-up in the national championship. You have a good, solid Clarion program for some of those years. Obviously, up at Edinburgh, we're sniffing and competing for playoffs and hoping to dethrone IUP each year. And then, you know, we bang heads with you guys year to year, and you understand that it doesn't matter what the records are. You know, every team in that league has somebody who's outstanding. It just may not be a full strength program that you're going up against week in and week out. You know, for yourself, what was that drive for you to be able to put together some of the outstanding rushing games that you had during the course of those 2 seasons in 93 and 94? And in that, you know, were you keeping track of a Michael Mann? Were you keeping track of a Larry Jackson and gauging yourself in terms of what you may have needed to do? Or were you just approaching it as I'm LaMonte Coleman, 42, 43, depending on which field you see me at.
Right.
I'm just here to do my trade and apply my craft and be the best version of me that I can be.
Okay. In order to run in this offense, people always talk about, running backs being closer to the line, being closer to the quarterback, because we had incredible tight ends. We had incredible tight ends and wide receivers that there is no LaMonte Coleman without those guys on the edge, because once I go second level, they're down there, our coaches, they talked about run blocking, stick blocking all the time, because if they just basically ran her out and then downfield block, and then a lot of those 70, 80, 90-yard runs, I wouldn't have gotten into the end zone no matter how fast I am. But it really all started with our anchor. I had to learn, because I was quick. I was really quick. I was a 4.5 guy, but I was like a 4.2 shuttle guy. So I had really quick feet. And sometimes I think I was getting to the line too fast. So our All-American center, Pete Geis, who I think the NFL looked over tremendously, 6'3", 295, just country strong, move any man, oxen strong. He really had to get me to slow down on the 32 dive steps, because if anybody out there who knows football, zone blocking schemes, you have to wait for the center to combo with the guard up to the linebacker. So when I finally hit the hole would either open up and shut, or they would wall the linebacker. So I have more of a 45-degree run to hit to the next level in the perimeter. So it was really Pete Geis, our All-American center, that got me to understand to slow down and take more of an exaggerated step. That was the key of our offense flowing, because when they went down to go get the one-back system, all the coaches went down to University of Miami. And so when you look at those great UM backs, they had patience. And I was getting the ball and just basically taking off, and I credit him with that. Now, as far as our competition, Michael Mann owned the PSAC. His patience, his quickness, but he was tough. We thought he was just little guy. We get to him because our offense, we got to Michael Mann, but he was always shifty, and he's just a guy that I think the NFL, honestly, I look at him, I look at a lot of the greats. Michael Mann should have gotten an opportunity. And then my biggest nemesis was Larry Jackson. Larry Jackson and I are still we still talk today, and we have various conversations on social media. Larry Jackson was a guy that played, I think he ran kickoffs. He was their all-purpose guy at Edinboro, and he was someone that I looked up to, because in 92 he was player of the year. 93 was Michael Mann. So in 94, I was like, it's my turn, right? It's my turn. I'm gonna do what I got to do. Well, they beat his heads up again in my senior year. Phenomenal comeback by the Edinboro Scots coaching staff, finding a way to come back from this heartbreaking loss up in Edinboro. And Larry Jackson, I've always outrushed him in our games, but he did enough to carry his team over for the W, and that's the most important thing. He got the chance to get to the playoffs because of that win, and he outrushed me by like 50-something yards. He's two-time player of the year in the conference. So people out there, if you have little ones and you're worried about filling stats, tell your little one, as an ex-pro, as a two-time Hall of Famer and an All-American, you don't get those accolades unless you are a complete team player that's focused on the win first and the stats later. Remember that. So every time you go to your youth coach and you're talking about Johnny didn't get 10 or 20 touches, ask him what did he do to help us win. And that's my little pro tip for you mom and dads out there.
Now, after completing your career here at Slippery Rock, you get the opportunity to become a free agent with your hometown Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
Can you take me through some of that process of what you went through in ending your college career and then searching for that next level opportunity with the NFL? And then we'll transition into a discussion of what that experience was like for you over the course of your time there.
Okay. So 94, we finished, I think we ended up winning against Shippensburg. It's our last game. I don't really want to come off the field. Like most seniors, it's your last time. I walk into the locker room, and now it's kind of like, now what? Because every senior has never been at this moment. This is a moment that you have to figure things out. Are you going to find an occupation from the neck up? Or did Blesto or National Scouting Services come to your school like they did and say, hey, you have an opportunity. Here's your draft status. And when was National or Blesto, I forget which one, who covers our territory, I ran a 4.56 for the NFL. And I remember my buddy James Ward was there, and Greg Hopkins. They worked us out. And at that moment, when the NFL scout said, you might want to start preparing for an opportunity to play on Sundays, that's when it hit me. And so Hopkins, who was a 2-sport or 3-sport star up there, he wrestled at the Division I level at Slippery Rock. He was everything wide receiver. He was my back brother, I mean, we were freaking frack up there. And so we tried to figure out what are we going to do? Like, for our training, we didn't really train together. After the snowball, we kind of went our separate ways in our training because he was still wrestling and whatnot. So I was trying to figure out, how do I get there? What's next? No one taught me how to look for an agent. No one taught me that I need to go to Scottsdale, Arizona, or Miami, Florida for other training facilities and things like that. So I just worked out at Slippery Rock. Didn't really go to class that much, was really focused on with the end in mind and getting different reports. And so once the agents start calling, I met with a few, signed with one, and realizing that you're really alone. It's like the loneliest time because you're nervous, you're scared, and you're broke. You haven't made any money yet. You're still a college kid, and you're dreaming. You're dreaming about now people are telling you about percentages, and you got to sign this agent agreement. They only get up to 3 or 4%. And you don't know any of these guys. So remember, the World Wide Web wasn't your friend back in 95. So how am I researching all of these agents that were calling? Who's good? You hear about some agents being lawyers or crooks, ambulance chasers. So I ended up signing with Joe Lenta out of New Haven, Connecticut, who was Jim Ward's agent the previous year. I'm not going to say it went well for me, and I'm not going to say it went bad for me. I just know that if I had it all over to do again, I'd have waited and chose probably a different pathway. Not because Joe's a bad guy. It's just a simple fact that we're making choices too fast. And so from weights to sprinting, I remember even going to the University of Pittsburgh. The Raiders had a workout. I think they call it Trees Hill, where the old facilities were. Went up there and worked out, and worked out for the Cleveland Browns. And so really it was to describe the time from my last carry, my last game, working out for the NFL. You feel like you're walking in the desert or a lonely place, not knowing where to stop, how fast to move, but knowing that the end in mind is this late April when the NFL draft is going to have their selections, or you're going to get your name called during the draft, Are you going to get your name called after the draft as a priority free agent? Or the worst thing everybody fears, all 32 teams never call you. So that was my experience leading up to the NFL draft.
You know, and choosing your hometown Pittsburgh Steelers, you know, what is that like for you getting into those first experiences in a pro level training camp and having to compete and adjust to being one of many hoping to stick and make that roster? And then fighting against, you know, maybe what may have been some of that tendency to see guys that you had admired and watched on television. You're in close proximity and rubbing shoulders with a guy like Coach Cower. Can you take me through some of that adjustment, and then maybe the tempering that you go through and having to make a quick decision of, are you going to be a fan and idolize guys, or are you going to get in here and compete and try to feed yourself?
Right. Well, here's how it started. So in the 5th round of the 95 draft, I get a call from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and his name is Tom Modrak, who ran player. He was the director of player personnel. And so I'm looking, and my heart comes out of my chest. And when I see I had a cell phone at this time, which my first cell phone, so I'm all cool. I think I'm all cool. And no one's in my apartment. I lived in an off-campus apartment, and I wanted to be by myself. My room, I did have a roommate, Jeff Newman, who's on the baseball team. He was just there for half the semester, and we're still close friends to today. But I get the call, and it goes, LaMonte Coleman? Yes, sir. This is Tom Modrak from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He says, we're not going to draft you now, but we're thinking about making you a priority free agent. We like what you do. We want to know what you'd be interested in playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you get the call that you think you're going to get, but the verbiage in that call is not what I'm hoping for. So I started to stutter and stammer during the call because I didn't think they called unless they wanted you, right? Or drafting you. And I go, I'm quite confused. The draft is still going. And that's what I learned, that the NFL is a business, because their cards were already turned in for rounds 6 and 7. So they knew who they wanted, but they were kind of hoping that I wasn't going to get drafted. So they asked me to come down to Three Rivers Stadium the next morning. And they just had one question because, as you know, Slippy Rock was a team that had a system to run a ball 30 plus times a game. And the only times that Slippy Rock really threw to me out of the backfield was for like third down shuffle passes. So I didn't really have any swing routes my junior, senior year. And so Dick Hoke, who was the running back coach, I guess when he was in the war room, he goes, before we sign him, let's just see his hands. We like what he's definitely a runner. So I got off the phone and I said, does my agent know that you're calling? And he gave me the best information, the best advice I could have had. He goes, in all my years of doing this, do not ever let your agent control your future. And he hung up the phone. He said, I'll see you at 9 o'clock at Three Rivers. So I get off the phone in a half celebratory, yes, what just happened? So you're waiting for the call. You get the call, but now they have to test the product. So I didn't have a car. I had to call my girlfriend, come get me, take me down to Three Rivers. I check in, 2 big mahogany doors. I open the door, tell them who I am. Yes, we're expecting you. The assistant calls Dan Ferens, the chief negotiator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, walks me to a room I've only dreamt about my entire life. He walks me into the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. I walk in and I said, on the way, I'm pinching myself. I'm like, stay cool, stay cool. I walk in and I see some of my favorite players, Green, Wood, O'Donnell, Woodson, lake. And they're like, take 15 minutes, stretch, and Coach Hoke will be right here with you. It was a rainy Monday morning after the draft. This is where the draft was only 2 days, not 3. And so Dick Hoke comes in, shakes my hand, takes me out the Three Rivers field. I can feel my heart racing and pumping, but I know this is either you sign as a Steeler or you go back to Garfield and tell mom and dad you didn't make it. So I geared up. They had me go into a week in a strong formation, swing routes, things like that. I caught everything. They put me through a battery test, about 10, 15 minutes. Because that's it. Let's go sign. Let's go make some money. Welcome to Pittsburgh. I said, that's it? Like, seriously, it was 10 minutes on Three Rivers to see my hands. So I go in, they have everything set up, had the contracts there, a year and an option. They gave me a signing bonus of like $2,000. My agents don't even know what's going on. I didn't hear anything from my agent. They had to call my agent and let them know that they were going to sign me. That's why I say that I chose too fast. So they said, we have a surprise for you. And Dan makes a phone call, and he say, tell them to come in. They were like, we think you're going to be a good one, but we want you to meet someone. And one of my favorite players in all of Pittsburgh walks in the door to greet me, and it's Mr. Nasty, number 95, the Greg Lloyd. They brought Greg Lloyd into the negotiating room to welcome me, told me that he's looking forward to going against me, like physical backs. And then they sign. We take pictures with my girlfriend. They cut me a check. And they said, go celebrate with your family. And that began my career. I called my family, called my brothers, my mom, sisters. And I went out to go have a meal. And that began my journey as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
You know, I can only imagine that, you know, all of that taking place in the time frame that it took place in and the manner that it took place in, and you're in your hometown relaying this information to your close friends and relatives. You know, how is it to deal with those feelings leaving the facility and going on back to wherever you went after that, and processing the fact that you're a pro at this point and having to get your mind ready to absorb all of the things that you're going to be walking into, you know, because a lot of times a job interview that we may go into, we have an idea of we want the job or what it's about. Right. But, you know, I think, and this is just my own thoughts, but I think, you know, a situation like going from a college athlete to a pro athlete, you really don't know what to expect of what's expected of you, even in agreeing to, you know, give yourself a chance. Can you kind of briefly take me through the post effect of that moment that you just shared?
Yeah, after signing the contract, doing the pictures, meeting Greg Lloyd, and walking out of those 20-foot mahogany doors of the old Three Rivers, now what? Where do you go? What do you do? Who do you tell? And I just can't remember my feet hitting the ground. Like most people, I'm sure, signing a professional contract or getting the job you want right out of college. And after I make my round of calls, I really kind of want to insulate myself, because if you've never gone through this process, the one thing you're thinking about if you're grounded is that you want to make sure that you come off as not cocky. You want to be humble. You haven't made any money yet. You still have these levels to prove yourself, because the next date they gave me was that week. So I signed on a Monday, and they told me to report to the Hilton Hotel downtown Pittsburgh to report for camp. And that's when they brought in, I think, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, some of the greats. And this is where they started their orientation of the vision. letting you know how lucky and how blessed you are to be a Pittsburgh Steeler and the code that you have to follow to wear the black and gold. Talk to me about what Mr. Rooney meant to them in their whole life, the Super Bowls, the training camps, how you're supposed to conduct yourself as a man. You don't realize walking this town, whether you're the starter or you're a practice squad player, that people are going to look at you different, and you have to represent an organization that's been around since the 1930s. So they really, really it's almost like an HR orientation of what it means to wear the black and gold. And I'm locked in. I'm listening. Yes, sir. No, sir. I really want their autograph, but I'm chilled. And I'm like, wow, in the next few days, I'm about to go to Three Rivers, and they're about to give me my number. I didn't realize at the time that I could ask for my number, so they gave me 35. But I really was trying to just get through that week, get through Thursday, 3-4 day mini camp, fit in, and find out what the next evolution was going to be to make sure I can make it to training camp. Because I heard many stories that people washed out in mini camp and didn't even get an opportunity. So you have all this anxiety going on. So I just want to make sure that I just came in as a rookie. Yes, sir. No, sir. Catch everything, run everything, and get to the next level.
Now, as we had our pre-discussion the other night, you gave me an indication of some of how the result ended up for you. You made the reference that you didn't get the opportunity to play in a regular season game, but as we talked earlier about that D1 level to ending up in D2, and then you're in this position where you have an opportunity, and that's all that you were wanting coming out of a place like Slippery Rock, right. And you get this experience, and you are a pro player. You've had that peek behind the curtain to see what it is to go through the pro level system, participate, test yourself against guys who had that opportunity to be drafted and high level picks and make the long life-changing money. If you can compact, your experience through that Steelers process and start giving the indication of, what doors open for you and what relationships you were able to form out of that process, I would be very interested in hearing that from your perspective.
Yeah, it was 95 was definitely, a special year. We ended up winning the AFC Championship, going to the Super Bowl, losing to the Cowboys. I was deactivated for the game on the sideline. But along the way, I was released a couple times to make room for other guys because we had injuries and still learning the business. I remember Thursday night playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. Leon Searcy, our big left tackle, I think it was the highest paid left tackle in the league at that time, and two other guys went down. So I got caught up in the shuffle. So Coach Cowher called me to the office and told me regretfully, we have to make a change and we got to move some guys. And I didn't realize the business that before you bring a guy into the active roster, sometimes you got to put him on the practice squad and you have to go with what your needs are. And Coach Cowher, he made a promise. He says, Coley Cole, what they called me. He says, it's not your fault. You did everything we need you to do, but we got to make room. As soon as we can, we're going to bring you back, but we got to make room with Big Search getting hurt. So I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, yes, sir. I think I may have been trying to cry on the way back to my locker. And so now I'm back on the street. And so along the way, players were still contacting me. Coley Cole, we miss you. We're looking for you to come back. End up coming back right before the playoffs. And as I go into my second year, they send me I get drafted into the World League and I end up playing for the Scotland Claymores, but I get hurt in the end of training camp. So they got me back home, worked out, and then got through training camp. And then I made a poor decision They were going to put me back on the practice squad. They really liked me. And I didn't realize that when a team gives you another contract, no matter if it's practice squad or not, they like you. But I told Tom Donahoe, our GM, I'm going to take my chances in free agency. And he looked at me like I had three heads because he wants me to sign. And I go, no, I just think that, I'm the fastest back on paper outside of Freddie McAfee. I've gone against these guys in practice, and maybe somebody else will pick me up. I thought that the allure of being a Pittsburgh Steeler coming off a Super Bowl runner-up year, somebody will want someone part of that system. And the phone call never rang for the next 30 years. So along the way, different people were reaching out to me for different jobs and whatnot. Kevin Henry, number 76 D lineman, he called me. His agent was looking for different players to go play rugby. And they offered me $150,000 or $175,000 contract to go play rugby in Australia. And for a guy who's never been anywhere outside of Disney, I turned that down. I didn't really understand the Arena League, so I didn't really go right away until 97. All this time, what had happened is that my less than 2 years back and forth in the league had opened up other doors and other benefits that the league has for players who paid dues. And even though I know that there was money cut on my check, but the NFLPA has been good for me post my career that I can even realize, because there's medical benefits and discounts and seminars and trainings that have allowed me to get into another path back into the NFL. So the 95 and 96 partial years that I was with Pittsburgh has really become a gateway to make contacts with people, with CEOs, with companies that are looking for former players to either support their product, or to come on board as a full-time employee.
Now, you spoke of your entry into arena football and having opportunities to do some different things in that realm as a player. You end up owning a team at one point and getting more development and using your business mind and your experience from what you learned through that professional opportunity and that process that you had with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are you able to talk about some of that experience from your end and navigating those different levels and those different aspects of professional football?
Yes. So, I call myself a Rooney boy. Anytime the first team drafts you or signs you, you feel that connection. That's home, especially being grown up as a still caller, Pittsburgh Steeler native. And so I liked how the NFL looked at the Rooneys. And so I always wanted to be I said, I had an entrepreneurial feeling just being down there for almost 2 years, seeing the breakfasts that were offered to us, all of the opportunities. And I like how the Pittsburgh Steelers treated their players. So through flag football and arena, I said, you know what? After not making it in 97 with the Milwaukee Mustangs and stints in Wilkes-Barre Scranton, playing there for half a season under Terry Carr and ownership of the late, great Johnny Unitas, through Rochester, through Johnstown as an MVP. I say, you know what? I took all those experiences, made a nice gumbo, and I said, you know what? I think I have the passion, I have the education, and I think I have the know-how to start a team. So my first opportunity in indoor and arena for his management was with the Marion Mayhem out of Marion, Ohio. Rodney Swanigan was the head coach, and he needed someone more in a director of operations, general manager, and even sponsorship sales. So I kind of wore multiple hats going into that season. That team was at the end of their 5-year history. They made it through 5 or 6 games, and just like a lot of indoor teams, they fold and close because of financial reasons. But having a taste of being a general manager led me to connect with those individuals in Marion. And I talked to my wife, and I talked about possibly starting a team. And it really started out as the Columbus Blue Racers, which a lot of people don't know. And we were going to play in the fairgrounds close to Ohio State. So as a Ohio State graduate, before I graduated, I met with two-time Heisman Trophy winner Archie Griffin. Archie Griffin, and I'll send you a couple pictures. They have something at Ohio State which is really unique called a senior upperclassman ring ceremony, where at the time he was the president of the Alumni Association. Well, when he found that I was a former back with Pittsburgh, we got to talking about business. He met my wife and basically said that come past my office if you ever have any business ideas. I met with him. He endorsed me to bring a team to Columbus, Ohio, and it was announced at the fairgrounds, but we never ended up getting off the ground because my business partner, what I found out, was financially capped. It became a somewhat of a tussle over the rights of the arena. So we had to go find another place to call home, separated that situation, and called Candy Tripp, which I still love, and we're still in contact. And the board members of Marion, Ohio, and the Marion Fairgrounds, we found the Marion Coliseum, and that became our home for the next 5 years. My wife and I paid for the season up front, far as the rent, and that became the start of the Marion Blue Racers for 5 consecutive seasons in Marion, Ohio.
Now, with all of the experiences and traveling that you've done, to me, it sounds like you found a lot of levity outside of actually playing the game. You speak of your wife, your pride in your daughter and your son shine through in your conversation. Can you tell me a little bit about your family life as you're forming it and growing and developing it? How does LaMonte Coleman, the hard-running tailback from Slippery Rock University, make that transition into being a partner, a husband, leading your family, and being the head of your household and directing your children into their various pursuits? How do you relate those things to who you were versus who you are and who you're hoping to ultimately be, as a capstone to a young guy coming out of Garfield in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? And, how do you marry those two identities together and get through your daily experiences now?
The connections to football in my life, they're on the same lane, they're in the same alley, they're in the same ecosystem. Back to football, as a Peabody Highlander, one of my teammates, Mr. Aki Jamal Durham, in the year 2000, I was out of a long 7-year relationship, and we have some common friends, and Aki reached out to me and said that if you're done with the dating game, there's someone that I think that you may be compatible. And he sent me a name. I made the phone call to my now wife, Siobhan. She was a second-year medical student at the University of Pittsburgh, Spelman graduate. She was at University of Pittsburgh finishing up her Master's of Public Health degree. She lived in Oakland or Shadyside, somewhere nearby. And we met at, I'm giving a plug to Starbucks. We had a blind date at Starbucks in Shadyside on Walnut Street, March 21st, 2000. Didn't hit it off. I think I probably pissed her off talking about my ex. But at the end of it was a good conversation. I walked her. She lived proximal to Starbucks, and I'm the walker in her home. I didn't want her to think I was a stalker. I just want to be a gentleman. Didn't ask to go in, and went from there. I was like, I'll probably never see her again. Maybe a week or so later, I'll say I made the phone call, seeing how she's doing. Years later, wife, mother of two. She finishes her med degree. Now she's regional director. Built a fabulous home. My daughter, Kennedy, she's now a Spelmanite. She'll be going to Spelman this year. My son's high school, going to St. Thomas Aquinas. My wife and my family, they're my everything. And football continues to knock on the door to give me these opportunities. That's why your teammates and being a good person and being someone I was on his brain. I was on his brain to connect my future wife and had no idea. And Akeem Durham is like, not only is a brother to me, not just football, but because of him, he became a vessel and an instrument of Jesus Christ to go connect us. So without him, I don't know where I'd be, because I can't live without my wife and my two kids, who are literally the oxygen that I breathe every single day that I live.
You know, when you reflect back to, those carries that you may have had against competition in the Pittsburgh City League, some of the long, outstanding runs that you had in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, your toughness and your ability to maintain and keep that energy going, to have that chance and opportunity and gain respect playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. If you had that one more down for yourself, what would that scenario be for you? Where would you position yourself in your journey if you could replay that event once more? And who would be with you? Could you tell me about that?
It would go back to Peabody High School. I would have, because I was a two-sport star and I know I was deficient in the academics, I would have raised my hand or connected with my teammates. I had some academic stalwarts on baseball and football, and I'd have reached out to Barry Nicholson, who's a doctor, Jason Craig, who ended up playing for the New York Mets, great with grades, Carl Brown, or one of our quarterbacks with the team. I'd have reached out with the players that were already doing well academically, and I would have humbled myself and said, hey, instead of us going to the movies, can you help me 30 more minutes with this algebra problem? And instead of going out and trying to pick up some girls at the original hot dog down in Oakland, I'd have said, hey guys, it's Friday night. Can you help me with this science project? So if I had to all do it again, I would have completed my student athlete journey with being successful in baseball, football, and graduating with a 3.0. So now all those other dreams of just being able to announce over the loudspeaker saying, and LaMonte Coleman has got a full ride with name your college, Ohio State, Ohio State, Arizona State, West Virginia. That would have been the send-off. And so with me just being a little short, when you don't complete your goal as a student athlete, you're always going to find yourself on the outside looking in. So that if I had one more down, that would be to ask more questions and seek more help academically, so I could complete my goals without all of the missteps that I made in my life.
This has been an outstanding, inspirational thing for me, to be a defensive guy who had a couple run-ins and heads up tackles with you in 94, to know, the superior athlete that you were in that day and in your prime, but to hear the growth and the polish that you are as a man, and the things that you reflect on and hold dear to you and are important in your conversation. You did something that most others wouldn't do. You asked me if you could pray for me the other night before getting off the phone in our conversation. And to me, that speaks to the deep man that you are and the good human that you are, even without having a daily personal relationship with you. I have respect for you as a competitor, but I have more respect for you now as a man, and just spending an hour and a half's worth of time and listening to who you are at your core. And I think it's important to present and show men of that caliber and put them out front for others to see and benefit from. I'm sure there's going to be some guys that are going through their own LaMonte Coleman story right now in 2025 and may not know what the next step is, but can find inspiration and find some comfort in some of the things that you've touched on and discussed. And then you give a real first person view of, even sometimes when you get your dream, you don't know how long your dream is going to last. Eventually, you're going to wake up and move on to other pursuits and other versions of yourself. And to see that you've found those and have landed very nicely on both feet, got all your faculties about you, and do not have damage from the beginnings that you may have started out with, and can appreciate more what you have in front of you and the abundance that is in your path. I thank you for being a guest with me today.
Ron, it's been a thrill. I mean, you took me through a roller coaster of emotions, things that I wasn't even thinking about, maybe suppressed, and to be able to have a person like you that's experienced and understands the athlete side, the student athlete side, and how individuals are dealing with a lot, because this journey has been difficult, but I just thank you for in the manner that you ask questions, how you set things up in this podcast. And I'm looking forward to being a guest in the near future.